Hello, everybody, and welcome to Theology 101. Welcome to our Friday series where we are going over pictures of faith from Hebrews chapter 11. Today we will look at how faith experiences both victory and defeat. Now, we must keep in mind the context. The readers of this letter were thinking about walking away from the Christian faith. So the author of Hebrews wants to give evidence after evidence of how God has remained faithful to his people. The format is to give you a sense of build-up before he finally gets to Jesus in Hebrews chapter 12. The first group of phrases has to do with the victories people experience because of their faith in God. Then the second group has to do with the defeats people experience because of their faith in God. Let's look at the victories because of faith. If you notice, the author transitions from specific names like Gideon and Barak to the general term prophets. Then look at the first phrase, conquered kingdoms. This summarizes the military power of prophets. As we have learned, Barak conquered the Canaanites, Gideon conquered the Midianites, Jephthah conquered the Ammonites, and Samson defeated the Philistines. The author notes that this was only possible because of God and their faith in him. The next phrase is enforced justice. This refers to the establishment of a just government. The prophet Samuel judged Israel with integrity, and Deborah enforced justice during a time of corruption. Then we see the next phrase, obtain promises. This is the idea that when God gave a promise to Israel, he fulfilled them when they acted on it. God promised Israel that he would deliver them from Egypt, and when they acted on that promise, they walked across the Red Sea. Then look at the next phrase, stop the mouth of lions. This refers to the story of Daniel. Because of his faith in God, Daniel was sent into a lion's den, but by the protection of God, the lions didn't harm him. And when talking about a lion's den, the next logical step is to think of Daniel's three friends. And this is where the author goes. Quench the power of fire. Like Daniel, these three friends didn't bow their knee to Nebuchadnezzar, and they were thrown into a furnace but were not harmed. The next phrase is, escape the edge of the sword. This is a picture of a king who wants to kill a person. We know that David escaped Saul's sword, Elijah escaped Jezebel's sword, and Jeremiah escaped Jehoiakim's sword. All these stories of survival happened because of their faith in God, who would deliver them from death. The author then places an interesting phrase next. Were made strong out of weakness. If you were to think of the strongest judge, Samson, you will know that his true strength only came through his weakness in the end. This principle is repeated throughout the Bible because this is the underlying foundation for faith. Faith is the response of all who are conscious of their own weakness and look to God for strength. So this important phrase in the middle of a list of victories is to remind us that victories do not come from our strength, but from God's strength. And the clearest picture of weakness transforming to strength is when the dead are brought back to life. Look at the next phrase. Women receive back their dead by resurrection. We know that Elijah, for example, raised a son of a widow back to life. But faith does not only experience victories, but also defeats. Look at the next phrase. Some were tortured, refusing to accept release so that they might rise again to a better life. Yes, sometimes God raised dead people back to life, but sometimes he lets his children die. The word torture has the idea of putting a person on a rack and stretching him or her from limb to limb. Then that person's stomach will be beaten like a drum until the muscle collapsed and they died from internal injuries. This is where we get our word timpani, which is a drum. Even though some people could have avoided torture and death by recanting their faith, they refused to do so. Why? Because they were looking forward to a better life to come with Christ. During the Maccabean revolt, there was a mother with 7 sons who were tortured with whips and cords. And when the brothers were thinking about recanting their faith, this is what their mother said to them. Do not fear this butcher, but prove worthy of your brothers. Accept death, so that in God's mercy I may get you back again along with your brothers. This part would have resonated with the audience because they were going through persecutions. The author points to people in history who have continued to have faith even during defeats. And the reason why they went through with it was because they were looking forward to a better resurrection. Look at the next phrase. Others suffered mocking and flogging and even chains and imprisonment. The prophet Jeremiah had been beaten and imprisoned multiple times. The apostle Paul was also flogged and beaten multiple times. Look at how bad some people were treated because of their faith. They were stoned. They were sawn in two. They were killed with the sword. They went about in skins of sheep and goats, destitute, afflicted, mistreated. The prophet Zechariah was stoned to death, and according to tradition, Isaiah was cut into two by King Manasseh. Earlier in verse 34, the author escaped those who escaped the sword, But here he gives a dose of reality on those who didn't. Then, the author adds that even if some prophets escaped death, many lived a life of poverty and seclusion. They went about in skins of sheep and goats, destitute, afflicted, mistreated. Oftentimes, a prophet would wear sheepskin or goatskin to distinguish themselves from the world. But another reason why they dressed this way was because they were poor. Although God showed favor on the Old Testament believers because of their faith, many were not treated well by the world. Notice a very important phrase. Of them, the world was not worthy. In the eyes of the world, prophets of God were not worthy to live on the face of the earth. But the author says that the reality was that the world was not worthy to know them. These great people of faith did not receive any commendation from the world, but the one person who did commend them was God. Now the author concludes by explaining why God didn't fulfill all his promises immediately. What was he waiting for? God was waiting for another group of people to complete his family. Since God had provided something better for us, that apart from us, they should not be made perfect. The word perfect has the idea of complete. God didn't send Jesus in the Old Testament because he was waiting to create the church, you and me, to be a part of his family in order to complete it. He wanted to expand his family to not only include Israel, but also all the nations of the world. And when Christ came to earth, he opened the door to allow Gentiles, non-Jewish people, to enter a spiritual lineage which began with Israel. This is the climax and purpose of Hebrews chapter 11. Why go through all these stories from the Old Testament? To show us the spiritual lineage we are joining and to encourage us to have faith in God like they did. Listen, most Christians do not have any physical connection to Israel, yet Christians worship the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Why? We are part of that same family through adoption. The author of Hebrews is showing you the baton of faith that has been handed down to the church. And the way you will continue to run the race of faith is to endure. Don't give up on God, because he has never given up on you. Stay humble in your victories and endure through your defeats. And remember that the God who was with Israel is with you and is waiting for you at your finish line. If you want to study more about Hebrews chapter 11, I'll leave a link to a recommended resource in the description box below. If you missed the last video about Samuel's faith, I'll leave a link here for you to watch. Until next time, see you.